due to time limits, but thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Professor Soner, for this presentation. Well, we have a huge delay, but we have our last speaker, Ersan, Professor Ersan. I will not make such a reminder as he looks at the defense alliances in the world uh, with an emphasis on NATO. You are already aware of the time issue. That's why I do not want to interfere a lot. If you can summarize it in 10 minutes. Thank you. Selamun Aleyküm. After this big, we saw a huge demolition after the Second World War. And to prevent strong states from interfering with the security of others, certain countries wanted to create NATO to establish global security, to ensure that social development of member states can take place, starting with the US, with the dominance of the dominant power states in NATO. They tried to so-called bring democracy to the Islamic world, but rather they end up with tears and bloodshed. So it is one of the important organizations. However, we need to acknowledge the indisputable importance of security. At the foundation of the vulnerability of these countries is their vulnerability about defending their own country. Here, if people can enhance their welfare in a peaceful environment, then they will become more secure. So, in the current picture, states came to the forefront again in NATO and brought up fourth generation proxy wars, placing the world at the center of conflicts. And they shed just crocodile tears. And the colonial understanding in the European countries has a backdrop of the claim that these countries cannot sustain their security by themselves. These countries leave their security situation to the Western countries, which opt for, in fact, spreading their clouds. So they open their internal resources to the colonial understanding again. Here, rather than looking at NATO's establishment reason, we want to refer to what lies at the source of NATO and how Islamic countries can prevent the hidden or overt military alliances and preserve their resources and means. And as the customers of the Western countries, how can they ensure that they have a joint defense organization and turn things around? And especially, we want to understand how the NATO-related countries can be used as an example to prevent this bloodshed. The operations that started in the name of peace in Afghanistan, Yemen, West African countries, Iraq, Syria, and most recently in Libya did not come to an end. On the contrary, it led to chaos and struggle. In every Islamic country where NATO has a presence, we don't see any stability. Israel, US, and NATO-led countries support these organizations, and Israel is encircled by Islamic countries, but it still acts as a bully. So the lack of instability, the stability in Islamic countries need to be tackled by themselves. In Azerbaijan, Nagorno-Karabakh situation, we have seen the victory of these countries. That's why the Islamic countries need to establish a defense alliance. Let's look at the defense spending of the Islamic countries and the countries they are giving their money to. The biggest military spenders in the world are showing that Middle Eastern countries have a presence. According to the latest data, in 2019, there's this 3.6% global increase, adding up to $1.9 trillion. 62% of this amount was accounted by America, China, India, Russia, and Saudi Arabia.
Dünya üzerindeki en büyük 5 harcama yapan ülkeye baktığımızda,
when you look at the top 5 military spenders, you see that China, US, and India have a concentration of this figure and steers the world agenda, although they don't see any regional or global threats. So this begs the question of why they spent this many $1 billion in military spending, although they don't have a huge threat. As the last slide would show, they use this as a revenue in the as the source of the bloodshed and tears in the Islamic countries. Well, these three countries do not have a problem concerning each other specifically. So these spendings,
ülkelerini ortaya koyduğumuzda,
when combined or analyzed together, can we move on to slide 8?
İlk 10 sırada
we see
bir İslam ülkesinin olduğunu görüyoruz. Suudi Arabistan'ı görüyoruz.
We see Saudi Arabia is at top. Israel ranks 15 and Turkey is ranked 16. So as slide 10 shows,
evet, dünya üzerinde askeri harcamaları yapan ülkelerin gayri safi yurt içi hasılaya göre oranlarını da görüyorsunuz.
Portion of the spending to GDP shows that imperialist countries lead the pack. Starting with Saudi Arabia, these countries have excessive military spendings. And can we move on to the next slide, please? Slide 10, please.
Evet. Bakın burada en fazla askeri harcama yapan İslam ülkeleri
Here
görmekteyiz.
you see the highest countries with the Islamic countries with the highest spending. Here, Turkey needs to be separated from this group because it has a 74% domestic share, domestic contribution. And we saw this in Nagorno-Karabakh issue in Azerbaijan, Iran, and other countries.
Üreten batılı ülkelere kendi milli sermayelerini maalesef peşkeş çekmek durumundalar.
Give their national capital to these countries. Here, Algiers accounts for 44% of Afghanistan, and it spends a huge amount of its national income to for military purposes. When you look at the countries with the highest contribution to weapons production is US, Russia, and UK.
asla bir İslam ülkesi söz konusu değil ve İslam
There
ülkesi
is
yok.
no Islamic country among all these countries. Therefore, with a reasonable initiative, both in terms of defense industry and defense cooperation, they're going to be putting a barrier towards transferring their equity to the Western countries. On slide 13, the number of countries, the list of countries which are procuring the highest number of weapons. Could you go back to 13? The number of Islamic countries which are procuring the highest number of weapons and arms. So, again, Saudi Arabia, India, and Algeria. So, 3 Islamic countries. So, countries procuring highest number of weapons. Out of 5, almost, unfortunately, 3 of them are in the Islamic geography.
Burada baktığımızda özellikle bölgemizdeki savaşan ülkelerinin
You see military expenditures in African countries in war. 9 of them are African countries, and 6 of them are Islamic countries, and 3 of them are again neighbors to Islamic countries, Muslim countries. So from that perspective, photographs show that Muslim countries with their natural resources from oil and with the income from the underground and over the ground richness, unfortunately, they are procuring weapons, that which means transferring their financial means to the other countries. So there should be an ASRICA, Confederation of Defense Cooperation. So very briefly, I would like to take you through an example system, which is simply placing this system into the heart of the methodology. And in the minutes of in the proceedings book, you're going to be seeing the full version of the paper, so that I will finish it in a timely fashion.
Evet, Ersan Bey, son değerlendirme diye anladım onu mu?
Ersan Bey, are you going to say the concluding remarks or?
Evet, Ersan Bey, sesim geliyor mu?
Ersan Bey, can you hear us? He was going to show an organization. Probably that's what we're waiting for.
Evet, zannediyorum teknik bir
Okay, there
arıza
seems to be a technical glitch, and he could not share his screen. Exactly, he froze. So,
şöyle söyleyeyim, çok Ersan Bey de tekrar gelmeyecek galiba herhalde.
so I guess he won't be joining us again.
Evet,
So,
değerlendirmek istiyorum ben de.
okay, so I would like to now finish this part. Well, distinguished panelists made great presentations which is obviously a wide spectrum of important topics. And, we have limited time, so we can't do justice to all of them. Hopefully, in the upcoming editions, at least 20 minutes per presentation and 20 minutes for Q&A. So, that's an obvious need because, otherwise we had to simply interrupt people. And, it's a mood breaker because, the presentations are perfect. So sometimes this could happen in scientific work setting. But, at the end of the day, this whole series of presentations are going to be published in a proceedings book. So thank you very much, distinguished panelists. We had definitely limited time. So without further ado, now we would like to proceed to the last question. And I would like to leave the floor to my next moderator, Cengiz Bey. The floor is yours. Thank you so much.